do have the news media here, so if you have a question, would you please state your name and then the question. I'm going to ask the first question. According to the Hutch News this morning, the House and the Senate passed a bill raising the speed limit to 70 miles an hour. 75. What was the wisdom in that when we have to replace all these signs on the highway in a year of a tight budget, plus the price of oil and the cost of gasoline is going to go skyrocketing, what they're telling us. And back in the 70s, we all remember when the feds mandated a 55 mile an hour speed limit, which hopefully never see that again. I thought 60 would have been appropriate. We want to address that because of both, they sent the bill out to the governor's desk.
Yeah, and that was one of those conference committee reports that we had. That was just yesterday. Part of the process is, I think, in that particular conference committee report, there were, I don't know, 5 or 6 bills that were rolled together into one thing, and that speed limit was part of it. I think the seatbelt bill was part of it, and a number of others. I don't remember without having my report in front of me. I don't remember off the top of my head, but surprisingly, there were a lot of people that were in favor of raising the speed limits, and that was brought up. Yeah, they're going to have to change the speed limit signs. Chances are they'll just take a 5 and put it over to 0 on the sign. You know, they probably won't replace the whole sign. But that was something that was discussed, even discussed on the House floor, as I recall. And argument was made that most of our surrounding states have 75 mile an hour speed limits. Why don't we? And it passed. So whether it was smart or not, I don't know. Sometimes common sense is a rare commodity out there. So that's the only reason I can give.
Dr. Ward?
John Ward. Apparently the bill passed is on the governor's desk to require voter ID. I'm not sure I know the figures, but apparently it's going to cost several $1 million for every proven case of voter fraud. Isn't that a place to save money?
What was the last part you said?
I think it's going to cost several $1 million for every proven case of voter fraud.
So, in other words, if we hadn't passed the law, we wouldn't
have to spend the money that's going to be required to enforce the law.
Yeah. Well, you might have there was strong support. I had problems with the voter ID bill. My problem was primarily that if elderly people who no longer drive, that live in a retirement center or live in a care home, they will now be required to have a photo ID. If they don't have a driver's license, they can use an expired driver's license if they have it. But if they don't have one, I believe that at the next election, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to go to the polls, several hundred, if not thousands across the state, who aren't going to be able to vote because they no longer have a photo ID issued by the government. So I don't know if this is a popular statement or not, but I was not fond of the voter ID bill. There was a lot of support for it, though. That's an interesting point that you bring up about the money that it will cost. It wasn't entirely convinced that voter fraud is a big issue in the state. But again, it seemed to be very popular.
Sorry, Decker, Galvin. With this ID thing with the voting, but every state is talking about they're having problems with fraudulent voting. If we don't get a handle on it, we're going to have a problem in Kansas. That's the way I see it.
Well, there is, as I said, it's very popular. I'm not going to stand up here and say I'm for voter fraud.
Yeah.
You
bet.
Obviously, I'm not. Obviously, I want to stop that. But I
Unless
don't
you got
want
a better answer.
I don't want, well, there were answers, as far as for the ID, I believe that if we were gonna pass that, then you should have been able to use your voter identification card, the registration card you get from the courthouse. You should have been able to use other forms of ID. Literally, you know, and I don't want to, I know literally people who are going to use their walker to shuffle across the street to go vote, and they're going to go in there and they're going to stand in front of somebody that they've known for 60 years, and they're going to say, I'm here to vote, and they're going to say, I need to see your ID. I don't have an ID. Don't you have a driver's license? I don't drive. I haven't driven since my kids took away my car. You know, do you have? And they're going to turn around and shuffle back. And this is going to be people that, again, bringing up veterans that have fought in the war, that have lived their lives, that know this person, according to this law, they can't vote. And that is my biggest concern. Yes, I want to stop voter fraud on the other side, but I'm not convinced that this was the way to do it.
Is there any grandfathering in there about people that's already pre-registered?
Well, if you're pre-registered, you don't have to show, you don't have to show a birth certificate,
Right.
but you do have to show your ID when you vote.
What forms of ID are accepted?
The government issued ID.
Well, like Social Security?
No, you have to have a photo ID.
Photo ID. Photo ID.
That's it. You don't have it, you're out of luck.
Driver's license or passport?
And I've heard well, we have to use it to cash a check. We have to use it to. Those are not. You don't have a constitutional right to cash a check, but you do have a constitutional right to vote. So whether it be you have to pay a poll tax, or you have to take a test, or whether you have to own land, or you have to have a photo ID, any block that you put in the way will discourage voting. Voting is already like low, and it's going to be lower. And I predict, and I have every respect for the concept of stopping voter fraud so that people don't go and vote when they shouldn't. I want to do that too. I would hope we all want to do that.
And just if you wonder how rampant is voter fraud, I represent parts of McPherson and Harvey counties, have talked to the clerks. To my knowledge, there are no voter fraud issues here in McPherson County in the last 5 years. In Harvey County, there have been 3 in the last 5 years. So is it rampant? I wouldn't call that rampant. I'd say that, once in a while it happens. And so.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Bill Seiler, is there any discussion of doing interim studies on increased consolidation of government and entities and school districts and that sort of thing? I mean, Kansas is like number 3 in the country in number of governmental organizations. Has there been any discussion of that kind of long-term thinking?
I'm not.
Well, some of the so-called EROs, the executive reorganization orders that the government is trying to do, those are consolidations is what they are. And we're actually seeing a fair amount of consolidation within the state organization. Now, that doesn't necessarily consolidate schools or local government units or things like that. So, no, we're not seeing a lot of that done outside of state government, where we are seeing some of that done. I know that too, that Kansas, I think, is the number 3 state as far as number of government organizations. I really think and have thought for a long time that it's very difficult in Kansas because of our laws for, even for local governments to consolidate. And matter of fact, we have consolidated government in Wyandotte County and one, I think it's in Wallace County, out in western Kansas. Just those two in the state of Kansas, and it took legislative action to allow both of those to happen. Now, why we can't pass a law that says, you know, if a city, if the county seat and the county want to consolidate and do government that way, they should be able to do that. I don't know why we don't have a law that's to that effect. One more comment for you on that. But, and as far as school districts, there have been, matter of fact, in the last year, there have been 3 school districts that have consolidated. So it is happening. But, you know, just politically, it's not at all popular for the state legislature to say that you have to do this. And there are other problems with that. Normally people think, well, you know, consolidating school districts, that's something that happens in the rural areas. Well, you know, you get out to the western part of the state and most of those school districts are already countywide districts. And there are a lot of kids out there that already ride the bus for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening because they are already large areas. They spend a lot of time on the bus. But in reality, if that should happen, just as an example, in Shawnee County, you know, which is Topeka, I believe there are 5 separate school districts just in close proximity to each other. If we're talking consolidation, those are probably some of the areas we need to be looking